Hey everybody, and welcome back to Sew Crafty. Today I wanted to show you how to make a simple Christmas stocking using French seams. It's really easy, and all you need is a piece of fabric. A fat quarter will work great. You're going to cut two of the Christmas stocking, so you'll need enough for that. A fat quarter, if you take that and fold it in half, it will be perfect size. And then you need some fabric for the top of your stocking, and then you need a piece of ribbon to hang it for about 9 inches long, I think. Width is however wide you want to make it. But it's really simple, so let's go ahead and get started. The pattern that I used was from Sew Scrumptious, and I will have a link to it in the description of this video. And so I printed it out, and it comes in two pieces. And there's the top part, and there's the bottom part. And you just simply match the arrows up and tape it up. And it gives you the instructions on there on how to put it together and how to tape it up. It's really easy, but I like to tape mine up on the edges and as well on the back side, just to make sure that it's secure, and when you cut it's not going to move or anything like that. So I'm just going to take my rotary cutter and I'm just going to cut around the lines of the stocking. If you want to have your stocking a little bigger, you can cut it with adding 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. It's however you want to do this. I made this cutting out with on the lines like this, and when I sewed it up, I cut it out again just this size with the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, and it worked perfectly. It was a good size, so it seemed to work fine. And you can use scissors if you want, but I like my rotary cutter. And then I cut around all the edges, and then I also cut the top off. And there's the stocking pattern. You can also draw your own if you want. Here's the cuff, the top of the fabric, or the top of the stocking, and it says to cut 2 on the fold. So I have my fabric here and I'm folding it. I have it folded once and then I'm folding it again to cut on the fold and cut 2 out at the same time. So now I'm just kind of measuring to make sure I don't waste a lot of fabric. And I'm just going to kind of bring it down a little bit more just to kind of match it up as close as I can, not to waste fabric. But you can make the cuff longer if you want. It's up to you. This size seemed to work just fine. So now I've cut out both of my pieces, and they are both again cut on the fold. And there's both of my cups right there. Okay, now I'm going to go to cutting out my stocking. And so I think this piece of fabric is like a 15 by 20 something. I can't really remember, but it was just perfect for the stocking. It was a little smaller than a fat quarter, but a fat quarter would work perfect for this. And I folded it in half because I need to cut out 2 pieces. And I'm just going to lay it on there and then just cut around the stocking. And if you want to add another 1/4 of an inch seam allowance or whatever to make it bigger, you can do that, but I just cut directly around it. Now at this point, if you want to pin it, you can do that too, but I just didn't do that because I'm pretty used to not pinning. If you have directional fabric also, you want to make sure that the direction is going the right way. So the foot part everything would need to be facing, up and down that way, with the foot part being on the bottom. Just make sure that you don't cut it out upside down. But this fabric that I have is not directional fabric, so it just worked out fine. You can cut it out however you want. So I've got my 4 pieces, And here's my ribbon that I'm going to use for the hook. It's about 9 inches long. You can make it longer, shorter, however you want, but I found that the 9 inches work perfectly. And so here's my 4 pieces that I've got to make the stocking. Now, to make the French seam, you want to sew the wrong sides together first. And so I'm lining up my stocking there, and then with my cuffs, you're going to fold those also, and you're going to fold those with the right sides out. That's very important. So just make sure that you fold them right sides out. Now we're going to sew a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance all the way around the stocking. And then after we get through doing that, we're going to trim it to about 1/8 of an inch to the seam that we just sewed. And this is the beginning part of making the French seam. Really easy. And what the French seam does is it keeps it from having raw edges for the seam on the inside, so that way you don't have to have a lining. And then that way you're only working with two pieces of fabric for the stocking and instead of 4. And then again, that's not including the cuff. And so now I'm going to cut about 1/4 of an inch to the seam that I just sewed. You want to make sure you don't cut the stitches that you just sewed, but as close as you can get to it, that would help. And then you just cut all the way around. And I also didn't clip my corners or anything like that on this, and it still worked fine. That was not necessary. And so again, just cut as close to the edge as you can get without cutting your seam. So about 1/8 of an inch from the seam that you just sewed. Okay, and now you want to turn it wrong side out. And then just make sure you poke out your corners and all the edges and everything, and make sure it's nice and smooth. Now at this point you can iron it. I didn't, just for time's sake, but you can iron it if you want a little bit flatter, but I just kind of finger pressed it and it worked fine. And then after you do that, what you're going to do now is you're going to sew again 1/4 of an inch all the way around, and this is going to enclose the raw edges of the first seam that you just sewed. And you're just going all the way around 1/4 of an inch, and it's still, the stocking is still a really good size. And this is such a fun and easy project, and it's really good for beginners as well. Okay, now I've done that, so now you're going to turn it right side back out, and you're going to push out the edges and make sure the seams are all good and poked out. And again, at this point, you can iron it if you want, but for time's sake, I didn't. But you can. Right here, I just kind of finger pressed it. And now you have your seams are enclosed, and there is your French seam. So there's no raw edges on the inside. It works great. So now you don't have to have a liner or lining. Okay, now we're going to add the cuff. So I'm going to flip it right back, wrong side out. Okay, and I'm going to take my cuffs. Now I noticed that my cuffs were a little bit too big. So what I've done is I folded both of my cuffs with the right side out. I know it's kind of hard to tell with the white color, but it is, you want to fold it with the wrong sides together so the right side is out. And since it's too big, I noticed it was too big for my stocking. I laid my stocking down and I've measured 1/4 of an inch from each side, and I pinned it. So that pin was 1/4 of an inch from each side of the fabric. And so now I'm just sewing where that pin is. And then I'm doing the same thing on this other side. Now when I did this, I did notice it was a little bit big when I sewed it, but it was fine because I just kind of folded it over and it was not noticeable at all. So what you can do is when you lay your stocking there, just put a pin right next to the stocking and sew right there where the pin is. Really easy. So I've sewed the seam, and again, you should have this cuff should be right sides out, and I'm just going to cut as close to the seam that I just sewed as possible. And again, when you do this, you're going to fold them right side, or you're going to fold them wrong sides together, so the right side should be out. Okay, now you're just going to open up the cuff, and you're going to slip the stocking on the inside of the cuff, and you're going to line up your raw edges. So line up your seams on each side and line up your raw edges at the top. So the folded part of your cuff is going to be at the bottom right now. And so I'm going to pin that. Now this part I recommend pinning. You're going to take your hook, your ribbon for your hook, and you're just going to fold it in half, and you're going to slip it between the cuff and the stocking part, and you're just going to pin it right where the seam is. Just pin it right in place. Line it up with the seam of the cuff and the stocking. Now you want it to be on the heel side, so make sure the ribbon is on the heel side of the stocking. Otherwise, it'll be hanging the wrong way. Alright, so now I'm just going to take pins and I'm just pinning all the way around. This part I do recommend pinning. And I'm going to take out that little insert part for my machine since it's so small. And then I'm just stitching about 1/4 of an inch from the raw edges all the way around. And then you're going to make sure that you also sew the ribbon into it as well. This is so easy and so fun, and it's a great scrap buster. It would be great for charities as well. If you want to give these, make several and give them away to charities, that'd be great. If you want to make some for your kids, for your family, it's a fun project to do. And like I said, it's great for beginners, and it's also kids could do it too. Okay, so when I got to the finished sewing the top, I double stitched. I back stitched just to make sure it's secure. And then you're going to flip it right side out. And then you're going to fold the cuff over. And then when you do that, then your ribbon, the hanger, is going to automatically stick out. So now I'm just kind of pushing my seams around. And so there's the stocking. Now I'm going to kind of fold my edges, kind of crease it a little more at the top. You want to make the cuff be about the same or a little more than the stocking. And so I'm just going to top stitch that just to keep it folded down. And one more thing, when you sewed your cuff together on the edges, I would back stitch at both ends just to kind of secure it. And so now I'm just top stitching all the way around. And then when I get to the end, I'm going to back stitch to secure it again. And then I'm going to cut off my loose threads. And there it is, all finished. So easy, so fun. And if you could, if you wanted to get more creative, you could put names on the cuff with vinyl siding or what have you. But again, these are great for a charity project. Great scrap buster. and it's kids could do it easy, perfect for a beginner. So I hope you enjoyed this, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know, and if you make one, I'd love to see it. You can put it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more crafting, sewing, and quilting tutorials. Thank y'all so much. Have a good one. Bye-bye.